Okay, we are. The recording has begun. And I'm going to now share my screen. Hopefully you can see the PowerPoint for today. Look all right, guys? Okay.
Yes,
All
looks
right.
good.
So I'd like to welcome everyone to today's workshop or webinar. What we're going to be talking about today is the 11 principles of character framework. This framework has guided the Schools of Character program really since its inception. But in the last 18 months, we've gone through a major revision of the framework. And that's the purpose of today's meeting. And we'll get to that more in a couple of minutes. But first of all, what I'd like to do is to just, again, to acknowledge that NJASECD, the New Jersey Alliance for Social, Emotional, and Character Development, is the sponsor of the webinar. And the presenters are directly affiliated with NJASECD. I'm Bill Trussheim. I'm the president of the organization. I'm a retired New Jersey educator. This is my 54th year in education in New Jersey, even though I'm retired. And I'd like to introduce to you Lori Coletti, who's our vice president. She's going to say something about herself.
Hi, welcome. I'm Laurie Coletti. I am the Vice President of NJASECD. I am also a principal at an elementary school, James A. McDivitt Elementary School here in Old Bridge, New Jersey. And we are a state and national school of character as well. And I am going to turn it to Mary to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Mary Reinhold, and I'm the secretary of the NJASD and the co-chair of the New Jersey Schools of Character. I am retired now, but I spent 35 years at Mackapin Middle School in West Milford as a teacher, assistant principal, and ultimately the principal, even going back after 6 years for 1 year as an interim principal last year. Not doing that anymore, but that was good. And I'm very happy that you're all here because we believe in this work and we're happy to help in any way that we can. So thank you for coming.
I'd also like to acknowledge Eileen Dacknowitz. She was not able to be here today with us. She normally does these for us. The PowerPoint that you're going to see once we get into it was created by her. But she was unable to be with us for a very good reason. Her grandson is being admitted into the National Honor Society at his school this afternoon. So that comes first. And so we're gonna put it together ourselves and share what we know about these revised principles. Before we go on, I'd also like to recognize our regional coordinators, all three of whom are on this call. Mona Noyes is the Southern Regional Coordinator. Mona's here. Mona, you want to say hello?
Yes, I'm delighted to be on here. We have a network throughout the state of New Jersey, divided into 3 zones, as Bill indicated. And I'm South Jersey, which is basically from about Burlington County, completely on south to Cape May. I'm a social worker by profession, but my love and devotion has really been schools. I was the character education coordinator for Cherry Hill Public Schools for about 30 years. We originated that program and had seen it have great success spreading throughout the district. Cherry Hill was at one point district of character, and and all of the schools, in fact, were national schools of character. So I'm delighted to see one of Cherry Hill's own on here. And my email is on there. I don't care where you live, what kind of help you need. We're all available to reach out to anybody who would like to share what is for us really a consuming passion.
Next, I'd like to introduce to you Cindy Dacey. She's our Central Regional Coordinator. Cindy, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hi, welcome to everyone. I too am very much interested in helping any schools that I can with applying for a School of Character. I am one of the evaluators. I also I am a retired principal from Hamilton Township. I work also with many schools in Hamilton. So if anybody needs any kind of assistance, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.
And finally, Doug Steck, who was our Northern Regional Coordinator. Doug, you want to hop on screen and say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you. As Bill mentioned, I'm the North Region Coordinator. Like many other people on the call here, I am actively involved. I'm the school counselor at Woodmont Elementary School in Montville Township. We were recognized as a state and national school of character in 2016 and 2021. And I've served as a state and national evaluator for around 7 years since our first recognition. So yeah, as everyone has mentioned, I'm also very committed to this work. I share that with them. I'll put my email address in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. As I said, I'm still actively in schools every day, and I'm committed to this work, and I'm also committed to helping other schools and districts in the process.
Thanks, Doug. I'm going to invite the three of you to chime in at any point. The presentation is going to be done by me and by Lori and Mary, but feel free to share your experience and your knowledge of this process. So the 11 principles, again, I mentioned this earlier, it is the framework that has guided the schools of character program since it started. And more recently, the framework has been revised by a task force that was led by Dr. Arthur Schwartz. He's the president of character.org. I had the honor of serving on that task force and being involved in the discussions, which were very deep, by the way, in terms of whether or not these 11 principles were properly serving schools at this point in time. And the new revision, which you're going to hear about today, is going to be used from now forward in the 2025 cycle of the Schools of Character program. Let me just explain the dates of the cycle. The application is due in the fall of 24, but the award is made in 2025, which is why it's called the 2025 cycle. I've had people get confused about that in the past, thinking that's a year hence, but it's not. And what we're going to do today is we're going to try to give you, I was going to say nickel tour, but it might be more like a quarter tour of the 11 principles and what the revisions are, and what you might want to be aware of as you prepare to either apply for the first time or reapply to be a school of character. Schools who are preparing for submission in November 2024 will need to use this new version. You see the picture here on the screen. This was published in June of 2024. It's available for purchase from character.org if you go on their website. And again, we're going to talk about, as I said, about the changes that are in this document, as well as some advice as you prepare your application. And again, Eileen Daknowitz probably knows more about these 11 principles than anyone on the face of the earth. And I did want to recognize her because she really has taught all of us how to do this. And she would have been with us, as I say, except for a family obligation. So I just wanted to be sure that we properly recognize the work that Eileen does for our organization, because it is priceless. So I'm going to dive now into the PowerPoint that she provided for us. She does this tips presentation. She's done it in probably every conference that we've done. And we're coming up on her 17th conference. She's going to be doing it at our conference in a couple of weeks. But we wanted to bring this to you in this venue because we have a little more time. It's not as pressured. So I'm going to start off, and you need to understand the application. That's really the important thing. And there's a link in this PowerPoint, which we will send to you, by the way. If you leave your email, by the way, you need to leave your email in the chat to receive anything from us, because we don't have it otherwise. So you'll be able to go on and look at the introduction to the schools of character, which is really important. You need to understand the 11 principles. We're going to go through each of the principles. Mary and Lori are going to do that for you. And then we're going to talk about scoring at the end and give you some advice on putting your application together. Again, this year, there's big changes. As I said before, this is available for purchase on the website. You need to download this guide to applying. It does have all the information that you need. You can get it on the website. The guide to applying is free. The booklet you have to pay for, but the guide is free. So I'd start out by if I were you, I would get the booklet and I would download this document because it will prepare you for what you need to do a proper application. One of the things that we've found out, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, is that many schools are unsuccessful with their first application, not because of what they're doing or what they're not doing, but because they're not capturing it adequately in their writing. So we're going to talk about that today too. So understanding the application. The application has 5 parts when you go through it, and the application will actually be open. The new one won't be open, I believe, until June. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes, it is June. The end of June, actually.
It'll be open in June. And when it's open, there are 5 parts to it. And it really does, it does take you through talking about your your demographic information of your school, your character journey, what you've done with character education, if you're recertifying, what you've done since you first were named a school of character. Then you get into the nitty-gritty, which is the narrative section, which you provide information about each of the 11 principles. So there are 11 narratives that you'll need to write. And then there's each of those has artifacts as well. We'll talk about that. Then you're going to provide some additional information after that will give us some information about scoring and about how you survey, and then you're going to be able to provide some photos and some other documentation that you would like to include. So those are the 5 parts. So this is the self-assessment and scoring guide. And I think, Mary, would you want to talk about that?
Yes. Yeah, sure. This is your Bible right here, the self-assessment and scoring guide. Each principle is broken down into the indicators, into key indicators. And under each of those indicators, there are bullet points. And actually, in order to be successful in applying to be a school of character, it's so important that you follow this guideline. When you're responding to your essay, you need to use those bulleted words, the words that are in there, because as scorers, what we do is we look through each of these indicators and make sure that you've hit each of them as you go along, and we give a score based on what you've done within that indicator. So each area gets a score, and then the average of the score is at the end. So we give a score. Well, we're going to talk about scoring later. So let's go to the next slide. So you'll see principles 1 all the way. This one goes down to 5, and you see on the side where it says follow each of these indicators as we review the principles. Okay, because we're going to talk about each of the principles briefly, because we could be here for hours going through each individual thing. But when you're doing your application, so very important. This is your guide to success right here. Okay, next
And
one.
one thing that we will send this document to you. Again, we'll send a number of documents to you if you leave your email. But this, to me, and I've been doing this since 2005, and this to me is the key to being successful.
Yeah.
And this is updated based on the new principles too. So that's pretty important. Okay.
Yeah, Eileen did that too. She looked at that and fixed everything. It's all set for you, and we do have it, and we can share with you. Yes.
So
Okay,
so the next section of what we're going to talk about is we're going to go through each of the 11 principles. And again, Lori and Mary are going to switch off on that, and I'm going to I'm going to ask that we begin that work, because this is really the nitty-gritty of what you need to know.
Okay, when Macapin was applying to be a school of character, this slide was so very, very important to me. It helped me to understand the 11 principles. They're actually grouped. So principles 1, 2, and 3. How do your core values guide character education, and do they work? So those 3 principles are all based on your core values, and we'll talk about that more as we get into the principles. And 4, 5, 6, and 7, that's another cluster that what does a school of character look and feel like for all stakeholders? Okay, so those involve everybody that's involved with your school, all of your stakeholders. And principle 8, 9, and 10, who should be involved in character education? Basically, the answer is everybody. And you'll see that as we go through those principles. And then principle 11 is the assessment piece. And unfortunately, a lot of people fall apart at principle 11. It's so important to keep assessing year after year, an annual assessment of the work that you're doing. Is it working? Feel about what you're doing in your school. So principle 11 is very, very important. And Lori's going to talk about that, because we usually say that this information, a lot of it comes from the principal's office. So she'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to that principle. But think about them in clusters like this, and it makes the job a little bit easier.
I think that you also need to remember, you need to start with principle 11. And even though it's not number 1, it is the first principle that you need to look at, because you need to know where you are, where you want to go, what you're doing that already works for you, and you need to be able to assess what's happening in your school. So that is where you start. So you have to save your narratives as a Word document. One of the things that we found as we were going through the process, we've been through the process 3 or 4 times ourselves over the years, is that you should do everything on a Word document and save it. And then when you're ready, after you're done editing and reading, and you have had as many collaborative pieces as you could possibly have with the staff in your building, then you cut and paste it into the application itself. You don't have to fill out the application yet. Write everything out first. Make sure you have the right word counts. Make sure you're using all the tools that you need. Make sure you have all your artifacts in place. Put it all together in a Word document on the side, and then take it and cut and paste and put it into the application. If you do that, then you'll always have a copy too of what you've already sent.
And one tip that again, with this Word document thing, you can do a word and character count in Microsoft Word. And
Yes.
it's really important to do that, because I worked with a school quite a number of years ago now, and they wrote some pretty good narratives, but they didn't keep track of their words and characters. And so they followed this, they used Microsoft Word. Like the day before everything was due, they started to copy and paste into the platform online, and they found out that they had, that their narratives were too long and being cut short. And so don't wait till the last minute to make the cuts, because then everybody's in panic mode. And so
Right.
just be aware of words and characters as you go.
And that's one of the good things that has changed, because a few years back, there were a lot less characters and letters and whatever that you were allowed to have. And that has changed. It has increased just a little bit. But that increase then means that you don't always have to have phrases instead of sentences, or you don't have to miss a period, or you don't always have to use an aspirand. So that change is a good change.
Also,
Okay,
just
so-
a tip that's on there.
Go ahead.
Remember the inactivity after 30 minutes. Okay. So if you're working and you don't save your work and it shuts down after 30 minutes, and that means you're going to lose everything. So please keep
Right.
that in mind also.
Which is another reason why you copy it, you write it all on a Word document, you make sure you have it, and then you're copying and pasting so that you're
Mhm.
ready to copy and paste everything at the same time so you're not inactive.
Right.
So now it's time for us to fly through the 11 principles themselves. And as I say, Mary and Lori are going to tag team that. And Mary's up first with the first cluster of 3. She's going to do 1, 2, and 3. And then Lori will take over. So Mary? have
Yeah.
at
Okay. Well, this is principle 1, and I think it's a very, very important part of the 11 principles because everything's based on your core values. And remember that your core values, they guide your character education in the school. Okay. But one thing that's important to remember is there's no cookie cutter model to tell you how to pick your core values. It's based on the needs of your school and your community and the things that happen within your school. So the set of core values has to be selected, defined, embedded, modeled throughout your school culture. This is your Bible. This is what you live by. Okay. And 1.1 says the core value, the selection and the affirmation. Don't forget that you need a balance between moral, performance, intellectual, and civic character. All of those values are very important. And one of the things that we were having an issue with this year is make sure it's a value and it's not an outcome. Like an outcome would be excelling or leadership or unity. Those are outcomes of the core values, but they have to be values. So make sure that that's part of your selection process. Inspire, guide, inform every aspect of school life. So everyone needs to have a common language. Many schools have a mantra, and the kids know their core values based on that mantra. So it's important that everybody in school is a part of selecting those core values and that they're embedded into everything that you do within the school. It's one of the last one in 1.2 says shape hiring practice, staff training, and new student orientation. When I was interviewing, I would always ask, have you ever been a part of a school of character? And if the answer was no, then we talked about it, and everyone knew what the expectation was within a school. So that's an important part in 1.2. Okay, you can go on to the next one. The core values are visible throughout the school. So signs in the classroom, information in your handbook, stuff on social media. Everyone should understand the core values. I made sure it was always part of my back to school night presentation, just so the parents have to work with you. Okay, it's important that they're teaching the same values at home that hopefully that you're teaching at school, and that you all believe in that this is good for students. So it says there the heartbeat of the school, and that's what your core values are. So very important. Okay. When you look at this PowerPoint on the website too, there's some examples as we go along. I won't take the time to go through those, or we'll be here forever. Okay, but principle 2 talks about develops, implements an intentional, proactive, comprehensive approach, embedding character everywhere. Character education and SEL should not be add-ons. Okay. Some of the schools that I've spoken to, they say, well, we just don't have time for one more thing. And anybody in education understands that. There isn't time for one more thing, but it shouldn't be one more thing. It should be built in to everything that you do. When we did visit schools, it was so nice to walk into a school and you could see the secretaries in the main office were greeting you with a friendly face. Everybody was part of the character initiative and made you feel comfortable. And you could see that it was a school that understood what good character was. Leaders can explain in narrative form the school's character development strengths and challenges. Okay, that also will go back to principle 11. You have to constantly have your finger on the pulse. Is this working? And do we have it embedded into our curriculum? They call it the hidden curriculum, because everyone knows that we have to teach math and science and social studies, but I always said in my middle school that it was so important to have students with good character also. That was an important part of their developmental process. So again, it's 2.2, core values infused in all aspects of the school day, even in the non-academic areas. Cafeteria, important. We had signs and banners and everything all over the cafeteria. So important for people to understand good character. You want students to understand that this is how they should live. They should live by this good character. They should want to have good character. Okay. Okay.
Mary, excuse me, could I just make one comment just for
You
the
sure
audience? When we had
Please do.
when we had one of our
Mhm.
gurus come for an in-service for all of us, he talked about the importance
Mhm.
of preaching what you practice and practice what you preach. And I think that's such a good motto, because that's why everything has to align so students get a consistent message everywhere that it's being talked about, where it needs to be talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. That's very, very true. So the school looks for new character practices and approaches. You should always be improving, just like everything. We look over our curriculum and see what needs to be improved. It's the same type of thing. Are our practices working? Are the things that we're doing to help students understand what good character is it working? And one of the things that we need to do is we need to allow time for staff. Okay, whether it's in PLCs, faculty meeting, whatever it might be, but time for staff to give input into the character education program and what they think is working, what's not working, and so on and so forth. Research-based approach to teaching SEL, PD for staff in SEL. All of that is so very, very important to model for our students. And everyone on the staff, like I mentioned before, even in the hiring practice, everyone on the staff should be modeling your core values. And it should work with all of your stakeholders also.
You know, if I could just interject one thing here, this 2.4 is very important. Because sometimes some people believe that there's a rift between the fields of character education and the fields of social emotional learning. We don't believe that. I mean, look at our title. We include all of it in our title of our organization, social emotional and character development. We see it all as one. And so does character.org. So the SEL skill piece is really important. Sometimes schools miss that. So that's something you do need to look at. Are you consciously making an effort to teach those skills, both in PD for staff and infusing it in the classroom? That's really important.
Thank you, Bill. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, up on to P3, principle 3.
P3. Okay, principle 3. Every student understands, cares about, practices the core values embedded in the school community. To go along with what Mona was saying too, I found a quote in the book that says, know the good, desire the good, and do the good. And that's using your head, your heart, and your hands. And I think that was a great way to talk about principle 3, because we want students to live this. This is, and when it works, and I actually have witnessed it working in my own school, it changes the whole dynamic, the culture and climate of the school. And it also helps with your discipline and everything, because you want students to want to do the right thing wherever they are. So the staff explains how they teach core values and how students apply them. The students explain the significance of each core value, and students explain how all stakeholders model core values. So that's all part of 3.1. When you're writing your application, you have to explain how do you know this is working? How do you know this through all of the stakeholders? School identifies ways for students to internalize, make sustained commitment to core values. So the students are going to take ownership of their own growth. We want the students to be in charge of themselves and actually others, because they may see something happening and they don't like what's going on, so they stand up to it. Okay, we always say be an upstander, not a bystander, and that's all part of this. Okay, make sure there's time given for student reflection. We had class meetings and had lots of discussions and time for journaling, and that's really, really important. And students explain which core values they want to improve and why. Let the students tell you what's going on. No matter the age, they all have an opinion, and it's important, really important to listen to them. Okay, thank you. Okay, 3.3 is opportunities for students to practice the core values. So they become habits of mind, heart, and choices, like we talked about before. They shouldn't just be using their core values in school, but in sports and in real life situations. Okay, we have at our conference, we're going to be having some things about sports, and I'm very excited about that because this is get crazy on a sports field. And when students know how to do the right thing, hopefully it'll carry over onto the sports field. And how do you give feedback to each other? Can the staff speak up? Make sure that you have a school that's open, that the staff can speak up, and the students also, and they can explain how to give feedback to positive feedback to each other. Okay.
Okay, over to Lori for the next cluster of principles.
So our next cluster of principles really does focus on what it feels like in the school, how it looks in the school. Can you identify it in your school? What you do in your school? Many schools do a great many things. So if you are just starting your journey, know that your school probably does wonderful things. You just need to organize it and know exactly where they all fit in. So let's start with Principle 4. Principle 4 says the school creates a caring community where everyone feels they belong. So what you're trying to do is you are trying to promote positive relationships, and you get your children, your students, to be able to explain and have a voice and talk about how they feel. Are they understood? Are they heard? Do they feel valued? And you need to do some restorative positive relationships. So restorative practice comes into some of this stuff. You are working on getting the students back into the fold. You are working on social emotional learning. You are addressing your core values. It also can affect how you do discipline in your school. Are you still doing hardcore discipline, or are you moving to mentoring? And are you doing some reflective pieces? So 4.3 talks about school leaders and how they're fostering the care between all the staff members and between staff and parents. And are your parents being welcomed and respected? And how do you know that? It's going to flip back to Principle 11 again, where you're doing all of your assessment, because your assessment is going to drive what exactly it is that you do for your caring community and how you build the climate and culture in your school. Your artifacts, when you build your application, your artifacts need to have information in them that show the staff feel valued. And are you offering PD on how to build relationships at the school? Are you giving your teachers and your staff and your students a chance to collaborate and work together? And are you building better ways to collaborate? You're not just saying, go do this. You're showing them, you're modeling it, you're helping them embed it into their everyday routine. Next. Principle 5 talks about providing students with opportunities to shape and form their moral compass. This is the service learning that's connected to the curriculum. Service learning is more than paying it forward or community service. Those types of activities are wonderful. You collect something, you give it to them, you're paying it forward, you're doing some sort of service for the community. But service learning is attached to the curriculum. There are components to service learning. Are the students generating the service learning? Have they done the research? Are they preparing a way to help the problem that they found? What is it that they're doing? How are they doing outreach? Are they doing a reflection piece? How would they change it if they did it again? And are they celebrating success? So those components, you need to find those components, work those components, have it children-led, based into the curriculum, and work on principle 5 as a service learning piece. You have to look to the outside and the inside. You can do things on the inside, you can do things on the outside of your school. If you want it attached to a community service, then you have to build in all the rest of those components to make that community service piece become a service learning piece. And you can do it through across grade levels, or you can do it on grade levels. You can do it any way you want that you feel works for your school, but you need to have the students understand the meaning and the purpose of the project. You have to have the students be able to talk about what they've chosen and why they've chosen it and how it made them feel. And the reflection piece says, what did it do? Were we able to do something positive for our community or for this particular thing happening in our school? They have to practice academic integrity. The students need to know exactly that they shouldn't be lying, they shouldn't be cheating. Can they explain what honesty is? Do they know what integrity is? And can they explain it? If someone says to your second grader, how did you find this information? How did you get this information into your project, whatever that project may be? They need to be able to say, well, we researched it on this site and I got the information from there and I put it in my own words, so that they're not giving anybody else's words. And they need to be able to say, if I have to say, I can cite it to there, maybe they're not making a bibliography per se or a footnote, but they should be able to say exactly where they got their information. Did the students learn how to stand up to peer mistreatment? Students need to be given the tools to do that. It's easy to say, be an upstander. It's hard to do it if you don't have the tools. So from an early age, from the minute you start this, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be embedded in everything you do. It needs to happen daily in class. It has to happen whenever you see an issue. You have to teach the kids how to be upstanders, and you need to teach them how to take the right step. And if they see someone having a problem, they need to be able to feel confident enough that the adults around them are going to listen.
The
So-
Hanover Park Regional is a great source. They do a lot of service learning. So if you want to look at the service learning and see how it's really embedded in the school in every subject area, you can look up Hanover Park Regional High School District. Both schools do a terrific job with that.
And okay,
If I could add one thing, Laura, also principle 5 is probably comes out with our lowest scores, and it's because of people don't understand the difference between community service and service learning. So
Right.
please make sure you read over that and you understand it so that it's not a problem on your application.
Bill, can you go back to the last slide for 1 second? I want to point
This
out the
was
fact
one
that
before.
these two emojis at the bottom are the difference between community service and service learning. This is saying, I need to do this. I need to collect food for the food bank. Okay, so that's a community service. How can you take that and make it into a service learning project? We investigated, we implemented, we reflected on what we learned. How did we align it to the curriculum? Those are the things that you need to do. That's the difference right there. Okay, you can go to 6. 6 is meaningful, challenging academic curriculum that encourages all students to develop their character strengths. You need to have a comprehensive plan to infuse character into your academic curriculum across all areas. Your artifacts need to show that character is infused into instruction. How are you using problem solving? How are you using cooperative learning? What project-based projects are you doing? How are your students engaged? Are your teachers exchanging ideas? Parents and students are able to talk about how it affects their curriculum and what they're learning. Your staff works on performance character. The students understand and apply performance character. The teachers are modeling. This stuff is embedded in everything that goes on. And that the students recognize that the teachers are modeling how to behave. And it's fostering good social habits for working together. Many times, students don't know how to work together. So we have to model how to work together and how to help them get there. As we move forward, the staff emphasizes and reinforces how all students can develop the strengths of intellectual character. Again, you're talking about creativity. You're talking about critical thinking. You're talking about curiosity. You're developing thinking habits. You're getting the teachers to model. You're talking about teachers respecting all learners, meeting them where they are and helping them move forward. And again, we are giving examples at schools who have done this very well. So you can get there, you can ask, you can go to their websites and you can take a look and see. Remember, it's always important to have the parents and the students stakeholder reports coming to you. And again, it goes back to principle 11, where you're going to use all of that assessment to make sure that what you're doing in your school is working. And you can say, look, we have this, we're doing this, and it's working. And we see it's working because we see the kids trying to do this, and we see the kids being upstanders, and we see the kids using those buddy benches appropriately and including kids to come out and play and working with one another when they don't understand and reaching out to each other the way respecting all learners should be. Principle 7 fosters character by encouraging students to do the right thing for intrinsic rather than extrinsic reasons. Now, we all want to give stickers and we all want to give that reinforcer. And that might be how you hook them. That might be how you get them. But that's not how they should end the school year. The end of the school year, they should be feeling like they want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're going to get something forward. So what you need to do is you need to take that extrinsic reinforcer and fade it and move it into an intrinsic reinforcer so that these kids are working to help themselves do better. So you're exchanging ideas and you're helping one another to develop and internalize that moral compass. And as the year goes on and time moves forward, the kids who start out young, from year after year, of the consistency of hearing that common language of character and hearing those expectations for SEL and being part of that restorative justice, know that as they move forward, now they can feel strong, they can be confident, and they know that their efforts are going to be recognized, and they start taking on that intrinsic moral compass. That's where we're looking for. So you're using behaviors and mistakes as an opportunity to reinforce character development. This is where moving from discipline to mentoring really becomes very important. This is where you see that restorative justice piece really working hard in your school. And the more students who you can reach and make them feel comfortable in your building, the more of your culture and climate is going to improve. And you will see that what happens in your building is going to truly make a huge difference and improve. And the course of their journey through education can only be better and better. And you'll see it because when they leave you, the people who are then with them will come back to you and say, wow, the kids from your school, they're really good kids. They care about this, or they care about that, or they come up with really good ideas. They're good problem solvers. That's what you want. You want to see that it's a long-term success story. 7.3 is all students empowered to have a voice in the school's character initiative. Including your students in your character education leadership team is vital. Even if they are very, very young, they need to be invited so that they can at least listen, because as they get older, they will have a voice and they will have suggestions and they will find really good things to be adding to the process, and your school will change. It could be different every year, and that's okay. If it's not different, you're not progressing. So you want to have these new improvements and the suggestions from parents and teachers and your students. Include some of the kids who sometimes get themselves into situations that they shouldn't. Include some of those kids in that leadership program, and you'll see a huge difference in their own personal behaviors. Our next grouping.
Over to Mary.
Mary.
Okay, so Principle 8, school embraces shared leadership as a critical path to deepening its character. So very, very important to have the principal and the administration on board in your school as you try to attain New Jersey school character status. The principal has to be visible and supportive. However, they are the leader and have played a part in the core value, but they need to be able to give that leadership to the teachers, the staff, the students, the parents, and allow them a voice, as Lori was talking about the voice. But so the team, the leadership team, should reflect the school diversity. And there's evidence of shared leadership ownership with all. Leadership explains nurturing of prospective leadership. So in our school, I had 2 teachers that really took the lead. Now, they always came and made sure what they were doing was the right thing, but they took the lead and got the ball rolling in the school. We had parents, the PTA, everybody got involved. And I had to, although I supported them all the way, I had to always take a step back and let them take the bull by the horns and make things happen. Lori talked a lot about the kids. It's so important to have the kids as leaders. We are creating the leaders of the future. I don't care what grade level you're at. It doesn't matter. You're creating the leaders of the future. So it's really important that the principal and the administration of the school understand shared leadership. Okay. 8.3 is more about the students assuming leadership roles. They should be able to voice their concerns. One of my favorite parts was always, we get such and such a student is here to see you. Can you see them? And they would be telling me what they thought was wrong, or what went, something that they didn't like that happened. And I always loved that, because that was coming from them. They were helping us to improve their school. And I think that's so important. And they need to be equipped to be leaders in the 21st century. So we're teaching them, like I said, at any level, how to do that. And I think that that's so important. Okay, Principle 9, all staff share responsibility to implement and reinforce the school's character initiative. Again, time and PD is of the essence. All staff are encouraged to be involved in planning, designing, implement school's character initiative. Everyone has to be involved. When we first started our character initiative, we used to have our meetings with the students on Fridays. And this was several years ago. And some people, I was vice principal at the time, and I couldn't get everybody on board for sure. And people used to take off on Fridays because they didn't want to be a part of the character education meeting. And it was very obvious to us that that's what was happening. So we moved the meeting to Tuesday or Wednesdays, but eventually people did jump on board, and that is so important to have everybody on board with your initiative. And the staff commits to finding ways to intentionally model the 4 domains of character. Students, parents, say staff model the core values. Another story is one of the best things that happened was a student said to me one day, Mrs. Reinhold, you know what's cool about Macapin? The teachers like each other. And that was like a big compliment, because they were able to see that we worked together and we communicated together. Your artifacts that you put into your application are very important, because they have to show all the staff is actively involved. When you have an activity in school, are all the staff part of it? And that's important. There's ways, staff demonstrates ways of holding others accountable. Everybody's involved in this initiative, and everybody should be accountable for their for modeling the core values of the school. Okay, 9.3 is staff members intentionally reflect on their own character and growth. That's really, really important. Give them time, again, in staff meetings or PLCs or whatever it might be, to reflect on their own character. What's going on with them? Are they demonstrating to be a good leader to their students? And that's an important part of the application also, that you can explain how this is happening within your school. So time is of the essence too. Giving the staff time for reflection and growth is so important. Principle 10, families and communities are an integral partners in the school's character initiative. I think I mentioned before that it was one of my back to school night things that I always talked about what our character initiative was and the core values of our school. And it's important that they understand that. It was all over the website. The core values were just everywhere for people to see, because it's so important. The parents were the first character teachers of these students, and it's important that they're on board with the school. So we're sending one message and creating or formulating the future leaders of the country. School communicates with parents about character initiative and seeks their input. Well, that's where your surveys, we're going to talk a little bit about surveys in 11, but that's where the surveys are so important. Express your concerns. Allow the parents to come and express their concerns. What's happening in the school, new families as they come into the building. We had a program through the guidance office that they were able to talk about our core values and character initiatives, and that it was important for every student in the school to understand what was going on. So that's very, very important also. Okay. And the school develops a community of character by involving different community stakeholders. I would say one of the things that I always enjoyed was career day, when we invited members of the community to come into the school and talk to the students about their jobs and things like that. That was just a wonderful day all around. And what I loved too was many times they would say to us, "What wonderful kids you have." And that was important. It was important for them to see what was happening in the school, and it was important for the kids to see what happens into the community also. And community members being volunteers in the school. I know that doesn't happen as much as it used to, but those kinds of things are important for. You bring in your veterans or whatever it may be. Those kinds of programs are really important for the kids to see. So the community should be partners with the school also. Very important. And look at the school that's highlighted, the James A. McDivitt, our own Lori Coletti is the principal.
I could go on and on about that, but I won't.
And with that segue, Lori's going to talk about Principle 11.
I am going to talk a little bit about Principle 11. as I've said before, and as Mary has said, and as Bill started with, Principle 11 really does guide everything that we do. We use our surveys, we review everything. Your leadership team should be reviewing your core values. Are they working for you? Did you have success with them? Did the children understand them? Do they need to be changed? Do they need to be revised? Are you embedding them into every aspect of your school culture? Are they everywhere that you look? Is your name and your core values synonymous? That's what you need. And if not, how can you get there? So you're constantly reviewing that. You're using all sorts of methods to measure and assess. You're talking to parents. You're working at PTA meetings. You're doing every event that goes on, and you're having somebody ask parents about what's happening. If you're taking casual notes or you're taking solid surveys, whatever it is, you need to constantly be measuring how your character initiative is working. One of the ways Mary knew was because they were saying, oh, you have wonderful kids. That's great. You want to know what? I haven't met a school yet that doesn't have wonderful kids. We all have great kids. How are we going to help them shine? How can we make them believe in themselves? And when we do it, how can we measure it? Where is that? What are we using? What assessment tool do you use? You don't have to use the same tool that everybody else uses, but you have to use something. A survey works great. And if you're not going to use a survey, which I would suggest that you do, what are you using? And is it a research-based thing? Can you say this survey's got a Likert type scale? This survey gives, voice to parents. This survey gives voice to community members. What is it? And you need to be able to work the change that's needed when you get the results of that survey. You need to be able to explain it, and your character education leadership team needs to see the results, and they need to discuss it. Remember, as an administrator or as the guidance counselor or as you only have one voice, but when you work together, you have a powerful voice because you're all coming to look at this Principle 11 and saying, how can we do better? What can we do better? Where can our students do better? Make sure your students are involved in that conversation because they're going to tell you how you can do better. We want that. Do you have an action plan? The action plan is 11.3. Do you have an action plan? Is your action plan for 1 year? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it a short-term goal? Is it a long-term goal? Can you share it with your leadership stakeholders? Do they understand it? Do your kids understand it? This is where we are. This is where we want to be. And we want to get there by such and such a time. And how are you going to measure it? What is your goal? What is your practice? How are we communicating the data? Can we explain the process? Do we have to add new practices? What is your approach? What interviews are you doing? Have you reflected on it? And are you giving opportunities for staff and students to set the goals and self-assess? The more open you are with that, the stronger your leadership team will be. And all of the information that you take will guide your core value group, and it will guide your school climate and culture group. You will be able to go back and reassess each one of the principles as you move forward. Bill?
Okay, we are at 5 o'clock, but we still have some more advice to give you. So, I'm sorry that we're running long, but I hope that it's valuable, and we're going to continue on for just a few more minutes and provide you with the rest of what we've prepared. When you're writing your narrative, this, as I said earlier, one of the problems that schools really face sometimes is not what they're doing, but how they talk about what they're doing and how they write their application. And it's challenging. Sometimes, schools take more than 1 year to figure that out. And so, one of the things you should be doing is to make a list of all the effective practices that address these items before you start to write. And what you need to do is you need to see where they fit best. You don't need to mention things, multiple times, but you need to mention them in the most powerful place. There should be some specific examples in each of the general statements in your narratives. You can conserve characters and that sort of thing. As Lori said, it's a little better than it used to be years ago. you do have a little bit more opportunity for wording. You need to double check your narrative versus that self-assessment sheet that we showed you earlier on, because it's really important to try to cover all of those items. If I'm reading an application and I've been doing it for a long time, it's just human nature that it's more likely that a school is going to get a better overall score if they do what we've just suggested and they align what they're writing to those criteria. As I say, that self-assessment tool that we showed you earlier and that we will send you, to me, is the key to doing a credible job on the application. And remember, the number of words counts. Don't want to get into the last minute and have to make all sorts of cuts. Yes, Lori.
I would just like to interject, because you're writing in a Word document first, take the scoring guide, write 1 or 2 sentences for every single bullet point in the order that they are given, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, whatever. Then go through the whole thing. Then go back and say, gee, can I condense these 2 sentences? When you're giving 3 or more in one sentence of those specific examples, can I condense that? Where can I change this? How can I reword that? So that you're not taking anything out, you're using the language of the scoring guide, and then you're cutting back to the word count that character.org is looking for.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes about writing comes from Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill once said, "I would have written you a shorter letter, but I ran out of time." And there's another expert on writing. His name is William Zinsser. And one of the things that always struck me about his advice was you need to remove clutter in your writing. You know, be concise, save words. And that's really important when you do this process. Okay, portfolio evidence. There is an opportunity to add portfolio evidence for every principal. 1 through 10, you can add 2 different documents. But in principle 11, because you're talking about all these different surveys and things, you can put in 4 documents. We recommend that you not use photos or collages in there because that really doesn't tell the story. You do have the opportunity to add photos later on if you want to. But we've seen schools that all of their artifacts are just photos, and you need to be more explanatory as to why these artifacts are important. I will tell you something from my point of view. When I do a school, I start with the artifacts. Not everybody does that, but I start with the artifacts, and I go through every artifact before I do much of anything else. I'll read some of the application first, but before I start any scoring, I look at the artifacts, because if the artifacts are done well, you know the school by the time you've gone through them. And it's really much easier to me because you have a picture of what's happening. So that's just advice. So don't, I know schools sometimes ignore the artifacts, but you should not do that.
You have a lot of opportunity to show what your school does with the artifacts.
Yep.
If each document can't be longer than 3 pages and you get 2 documents, you get 6 pages that you can fill with artifacts that reflect that principle. And that's very powerful in an application.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the scoring process before I turn this over to Mary, who will continue. The way this works is one of the pieces of the application, which we didn't talk about, is you have an opportunity to enlist your character ed committee to do this kind of scoring for your school. And what they would do is that they would go through the 11 principles, all of the different indicators for the 11 principles, and score the different items for each principle. And then what you generate is a score at the end. So you would get an idea of what your folks on your committee think about your school. One of the things that I just want to comment on here is if you have somebody who is really supportive of your school and gives everybody a 4 for everything, well, that's kind of not all that useful, because if you think about some Olympic scoring, they throw out the top score, they throw out the bottom score. Well, that top score, if somebody gives a 4 to everyone, you're not getting any kind of the definition of what's going on in your school. So one of the things you need to do maybe is with that committee, you might have to take some time and make sure everybody understands what's going on in the school and how to do this particular project. In the end, your schools that score 3.3 or above qualify to be a state school of character. Schools that score above a 2.7 but not a 3.3 are honorable mention. And those that are below 2.7 are considered emerging schools. We believe this is a continuous improvement process. So we don't believe that any school that goes through this work shouldn't be honored in some way because they've started their journey. And sometimes we all know you don't get to the top of the mountain in the first year, and it's actually a good experience to be able to get the feedback and make improvements, and you're going to be better off for that by the time you're done. But these are the criteria for scoring, so you need to know that, and that hasn't changed. One of the things that, well, I'll let Mary. Mary, why don't you talk about this because you deal with this all the time as we get these things in.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right. First of all, I have to say that in New Jersey, we have between 40 and 50 scorers for our applications. We try to work in teams as much as possible. It doesn't always happen because we we used to have to do 2 and 3 applications, but because of all the volunteers, we're now down to hopefully 1 application per person. That doesn't always happen either, but you submit an application for state, and if you decide to go on to national, that same application automatically goes on to the national level. The scoring is based on the revised 11 principles as of 2025. So the schools that are applying this year will be using the revised scoring. And also if you're recertifying, if you got school character in 2020, this is your year to recertify, and you need to use the new revised 11 principles for your application. Each unit of the narrative for each principle scored from 1 to 4, as Bill was talking about before. And if your total score is a 3.3, with no unit average less than 3, you become a New Jersey school of character. And then at that point, you're invited to try for national school of character or district of character for an additional $250 fee. So you do pay to have the score done at the state level, and then you do have to pay an additional fee to have it done at the national level.
I'm just going to interject so you understand, because we've had some people come back to us about this. The $250 fee for state and national goes to character.org, does not come to our organization.
Right.
We don't get a penny for this. We do it because we're volunteers and we know it's good work and we know it's a benefit to schools and everyone in them. So just to be clear about that, the money goes directly to character.org. We do not get a penny. Okay, that's my sermon on this.
When you get your state score back, if you have any 2s in the state score, you still can become a New Jersey school character. But sometimes if you have more than 2 2s, especially, we'll suggest that you take another year to improve some of the things in your application before going on to national. Basically, don't spend the $250 until you're ready to go. Okay, so that's and when you get your national evaluation, you cannot receive any 2s in any of the items. So they have to be all 3s and 4s. Again, a 3.3 and higher is a national school character.
Right. And I might add that there may be a change in that rule about the 2s, so that you can
that's true.
In your application and still be a national school of character, but no average lower than 3.0 for
Right.
any of the principles.
I would like to address the recertification. If you are looking to recertify, your application has to be a regular application filled with all of the information that you would put in any application. Plus, you have to add extra information about how you did your outreach and growth from the last time you were chosen as a school of character. So your recertification application actually has more information in it than the original application.
If I could add something to that too, we have had schools just pretty much resubmit their application from 5 years ago, and it doesn't work that way, because when I send the information out to the scorers, they also have access to the score sheet from the previous 5 years, and they're looking, like Lori said, for the growth. That's what they want to see. Did you look and reflect on your areas of growth, and have you done things to improve those areas of growth? Okay, so that's really important. Okay, the district recertification, the districts have to have 51% of their schools, including their high school, certified as a state or national school of character. And you have to talk about your strategic planning and human resources. All of that has to be included in the district. One of the things that, because West Milford is a district of character too, and one of the things that I was told is, do not highlight the school's accomplishments. What you're talking about is, how do the schools interact? And what strategies are put into place to make it a district of character? How do you respond to the community? And do you have the community in, like we talked about, being stakeholders? Are they a part of the whole entire district? And those things are really, really important. So you're just not highlighting your schools. You're figuring out what the district is doing to be a school, to be a district of character. Did we covered that?
You covered the recertification.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this,
Okay,
this is
yeah,
just
so-
the basic information about how
Yep.
evaluators score, you know,
Mhm.
what they, you know, and again, this, you know, you can look at this when we send this out.
That's the same. Mm-hmm.
So again, you know, what we want you to do is to put your time in to prepare your application. You use Word, check your word count, do your editing, and then fill in the actual online application. And hopefully wait for the phone call with some good news. And that's the end of the process. So, do you need help? We can provide us a mentor school to guide you through the process. And that's courtesy of our regional networking centers. As I said, Mona, Cindy, and Doug are on this call. You can reach out to us at njasecd@gmail.com with any questions that you might have. And in addition, if you're interested in finding out more, we have a conference coming up in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from yesterday, May 22nd, down at Rider University. And you'll have an opportunity to learn about how character is the core to student and adult success. There is a QR code to register included in this, and we have a keynote panel. You can see some of them there in that on that slide. And we know it's going to be a good opportunity to learn more and to actually hear from schools who do the work. More than half of our presentations are going to be given by schools who are schools of character or who have been schools of character. And it'll be a great opportunity to hear some experts, but more importantly, to hear some practitioners who are in the same shoes as you are, who are doing this work. So there's still time to register. We hope you'll consider that. And in 2 weeks, we'll get together down at Rider University. It's always a great time. So finally, here's our contact information. The email for NJASECD, as I mentioned, our website. The recording for this will be on the website. My email, Lori's email, and Mary's email, Doug's email, Cindy's email, and Mona's email. So, you know, we're all here to help you. If you'd like to get in touch, please do so. We will send this out as long as you put your information in the chat so we know who you are. We will send this to you and you will have access to all this information. So please, if you haven't yet done so, put your name in the chat with your email and and where you're from, and we will send the email out to you. I know it's way past our time. There's an awful lot of information to share, And I thank Lori and Mary for doing the bulk of that work. And I'd like to open it up. If anybody has a question, simply unmute and ask it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can see everybody. I said, if you have a question, please just jump in and ask. And please put your name, where you're from, and your email if you want to receive this information. I haven't been able to see all that because I've been sharing my screen, but hopefully we have it here.
And we want you to know that no matter where you are in your journey, if you're brand new and looking to see if your school can to work on this, or if you're in the middle of the process looking to recertify, or just looking to make sure that you can maybe move from honorable mention to School of Character, please reach out to us. We will help you if we can to do anything you need.
Okay, does anyone have any
Thank you.
questions or comments? Okay.
Thank
Well-
you. It was very interesting.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it. And if as I said, make sure your email is in the chat, and we will send the materials out probably tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm from Sky Schools, which is a nonprofit which teaches social emotional learning and breathwork in schools.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, like, what your perspective was on stress management for character building, the importance of stress management, because we teach that as well.
Well, we certainly believe that there's an interconnection between the character education movement, the social and emotional learning movement, and the school culture and climate movement. And part of that is well-being and mental health. And certainly post-pandemic, we know that everybody's been under greater amounts of stress than usual. So, that certainly is a very important aspect of all of this work. You may wonder why, it's not captured in so many words in the 11 principles, but in practice, all of us do that. All of us realize that in terms of wellness, mental health, and being able to function in a classroom, that's important. So yes, we talk.
Maya, I can speak a little bit to that from Woodmont, the elementary school where I'm at. We incorporate mindfulness quite a bit, to the point where we actually have 2 mindfulness periods a day. We have a 5-minute mindfulness period to start the morning immediately after morning announcements, where we have one of our classroom aides who's practiced mindfulness for years actually goes on our PA system every morning and leads all of us in deep breathing exercises and things of that nature. We do that to start the day, and then also immediately after recess. We found that was a time where lunch and recess periods, of course, are kind of unsupervised and fun, and the kids get to do what they want, which they should. But then we found that coming back into academics for some kids immediately after that fun period was a challenge. So we start each afternoon also with about a 3 to 5 minute mindfulness period with guided breathing that's led over the PA system, and classes really do stop what they're doing and engage in that. And we also have incorporated that a little bit in terms of behavior management and conflict resolution. We use a kind of a theory that we used in conjunction with a local therapist that has done some work with our schools, where we use the mantra kind of stop, breathe, and choose. We actually have posters in our school that say that. So essentially, when a student feels stress, whether it be due to peer conflict or the stress of schoolwork or what it might be, literally stop what you're doing, take a deep breath, and then think about what your options are and choose. So it's a really cyclical course that we actually teach the kids of stop, breathe, and then make your choice. So we've been very cognizant of that. I know many schools do it in different ways. So, but I loved your question, and it sounds like you're doing great work.
It is great. It's amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Maya, let me say to you that because my district has some very competitive, high achieving schools, but as the character begins to be very strong in those schools, somehow the emphasis, the scores do not decline. In fact, they really go up. But the emphasis becomes is somehow not on the competition, but it's on the whole business about the culture is very, very different. So I think that that's part of the answer to stress in high achieving schools or any schools, is that as kids begin to learn how to deal with one another better, and that certainly is SEL, all of those tools are so critical.
Yeah.
The stress level goes down. That's my own experience. That's been what I've seen.
Yeah, it's our values, I guess, in the end, which matters, which is what you're emphasizing here.
Yes, yes.
So we don't have to get the 100% to feel good about ourselves.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we end today?
No.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for being here. I hope that you found it to be worthwhile, and we will get this information out tomorrow, hopefully, as long as we don't have any snags with the recording or with the with any of it. The recording will end up being on our website. Once that's up, I'll put a link so that you can go to our website and view the recording. So that might take a little longer than sending you the PowerPoint. But again, I'd like to thank all of you. I hope that that you will all consider certifying or recertifying or at least doing this work in your school. You can use the 11 principles as a framework without applying for the schools of character. I mean, it is a good framework. It does help you improve your school. But once you do the work, you might as well be recognized for it. So at that point, then you can take the next step. So, you know, I see most of us on this call, everyone from NJASECD has done this work, and we know how important it is and how good it is for kids, teachers, administrators, parents, and community. So thank you all for being here today, and so I'll conclude it. And again, I'll stay on a couple of minutes if you have not put your email in the chat so that we can get in touch. So thank you for being
Good job, everyone. Good job, everyone.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Great work.
Thank you.
Oh.